Yes, 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 and yes. Welcome back once again to another episode of a Stonewall's Perspective podcast. I am your host, Alexander Stone, and today we have another very special guest with us. On the last episode, we had the Savvy Truth, and this episode, we have the host of Steel Truth. Please welcome Ann Vandersteel. How are you doing today?
Oh, Alexander, it's good to see you. May I call you Alex or Alexander? What do you prefer?
Alex, I prefer Alex.
Okay. All right. Well, I just want to be clear. It's an honor to be with you. You are quite enterprising listening to what you were asking from me in terms of connections that you've got going on, running campaigns. I mean, my goodness. I'm feeling like I'm coming up short here sitting next to you.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. God has given me an opportunity to share the truth, and I'm really just pressing into that and leaning into that. And I think that's all something that all of us we should be doing. And so
Yeah.
today we're just going to be talking about that truth, the truth that we should be continuing to share. We talked about this in the last episode that I did, and I want to continue with that. But before we do that, could you really just tell everyone about who you are, where you come from, your upbringing, your faith, why you believe what you believe, and how you got into this conservative realm of things?
Well, I'm going to start with the most recent question and work backwards, a little easier that way. But I got into podcasting in 2016 because I decided I wanted to support President Trump. I used to work for President Trump when he was Mr. Trump here in Florida at one of his properties called the Trump Plaza in West Palm. And I thought he was a fantastic businessman. And I said, gosh, if he ever runs for president, I would vote for him. So my dreams were answered years later. And I was, just happy to be able to jump on Twitter and then get into the podcasting world through another gentleman by the name of Bill Mitchell, who had a podcast called Your Voice America, and it was quite big. We were very, very big. We would get somewhere between 300,000 and 400,000 live views a night on our show, and that we were sort of the early podcasters back then in terms of having a footprint like that. Censorship kind of changed things. I started my own show called Steel Truth back in 2017 when I decided I thought investigative journalism was really super interesting, and it morphed into investigative journalism / nightly news, and of course boots on the ground. So I travel a lot, I speak a lot at various events and for different organizations. And I am a staunch conservative. I believe in the constitutional republic, not this administrative state that in which we're being dictated by, not governed. I grew up in a very conservative house, so it wasn't too far for me to stretch to move into this business. I did study journalism in college, didn't do anything with it. When I graduated, I learned that the media was corrupt back then and they were very left leaning, and I just didn't want to swim in that sewer. So when the opportunity for podcasting made itself available, I kind of jumped in, said, well, I've got 2 children who are choosing to serve in our military. This is how I can serve. So it's been a just a journey in this swampy world of media, but I've met the most extraordinary people, particularly on the health and freedom journey, which really expanded my relationship with the Lord and learning more about the Lord and coming to Christ, being baptized this summer. And this past summer at one of the health and freedom tours in Newport Beach, California, during an Anaheim, California tour stop. And it's been an amazing experience. I feel very blessed. I feel like I've learned a lifetime of information in just the last 12 months alone. And even the 4 years before that, I felt like I learned a lot, understanding the fact that there isn't a Republican or a Democrat party anymore. There's not a 2-party system. There's them and us. And we are the free people who had all of our God-given rights taken away by the administrative state, by them. And who are them? And who powers them and funds them and gives them their orders? Well, that's a whole other class of people known as the global cabal and the big corporate and big pharma technocracy, the Silicon Valley speech cartel. So when you start to understand what you're up against and who your audience is, it either empowers you to stand up or sit down in front of a mic, or you run and look the other way and pretend like nothing's happening. So I choose to run into the fire fearless, and I'm just happy to be able to meet people like yourself.
That is so amazing. I love how you mentioned the health and freedom events, and that's kind of how we met. Sort of. I went to the Colorado event back in September, and then the week later, I met you at an event that Clay Clark invited both of us to.
Yeah.
And it's so cool how patriots and Christians have been able to connect through what Clay Clark is doing with his events and everything that he's doing, just sharing the truth, spreading the truth. And that is something that every single one of us need to do if we call ourselves a Christian and if we call ourselves a conservative. I said this in the last episode. I'm tired of people saying that they're the silent majority. There needs to be no more silent majority. We need to step up and stand up because we need to give people a voice for truth. And it says that on your website, we give people a voice. And that's exactly what we should do as people who love our nation. Now, you have interviewed people, very many people on your podcast: Judge Janine, Mike Flynn, Mel K, Sidney Powell, Mike Lindell, Lynn Wood, so many Christians, so many conservatives, people who love this nation. And, how has that really affected your life, being able to get involved with all of these people and be able to spread the truth alongside with these people?
Well, it's been really remarkable. I mean, if you'd asked me 5 years ago, would I be talking to these people? I would have said, why would they be talking to me? Sometimes I still ask that question, but at this point now, people have really, this is a group of people that you just rattled off who've set their egos aside and don't look at themselves because they have a monster following as celebrities of any stature at all. They look at themselves as children of God who are on a mission to save the country and to, bring people to God and restore God into the architecture, the fabric of who we are, because we are second covenant nation here. And this is the journey that we're on. So I don't think any of the peoples that you mentioned look at themselves any differently than you or I do. But as I said, they are committed to the journey, and they're committed to seeing the journey through to the end so that we save as many people as we can. But along the way, we save our country, we restore our founding fathers' creation, our documents, and the way of life in which we were intended to live, not the one in which we're being subject to. So I have to tell you this much, though. Some of the most extraordinary interviews I've ever done weren't from the people you just mentioned. It was from the people you didn't mention, from the people whose names aren't in headlines on a regular basis, who don't have a big following. They are the people that have been out there working every single day, trying to get something accomplished, or they're retired and they're pouring their life savings into what they believe is defending our country. And they're the ones that I believe really are the people that should be looked up to and respected, because they're not doing it for the fame, the glory, or the money. They're doing it because it's the right thing to do and nobody's looking. And to me, and I don't mean that disrespectfully to any of the aforementioned names, but I mean it. And I think these people that you just rattled off would all agree. It's the unknown individual who's doing the right things for the right reasons when nobody's looking. Those are the people that should be receiving the accolades, and that we should be lifting them up.
That's exactly right. Our friends from Flyover Conservatives, they say this all the time. People wanted Donald Trump to do 80 million things to save our country. But what we need to save our country is for 80 million people to do one thing to save our country. And you don't have to have a huge, massive platform to speak out. You can do something without having that platform. You can go to door to door and push your neighbors to go and call their legislators for conservative legislation. And you can go and just tell others the truth about the gospel. It doesn't matter. You don't have to have the biggest platform in the world to do it, as long as you're doing something to save our nation.
That's right. And again, one of my calls to action is very basic. Either if you want to get behind a microphone, that's awesome. But I recently just joined an organization, Sarasota Moms for America. It's, how I intend to actually get into the local community and roll up my sleeves and get, into action, which is going to be helping educate people in my community about conservative values, principles, why they should vote for certain candidates, whatever it is we can do. Of course, fight the mask mandate and all this kind of stuff that they're still trying to, push down here in certain communities. But also, if you don't want to do that, if you don't want to join a group, then as a taxpayer, even as a rent payer, because your rent pays the mortgage, which also includes a portion of property taxes for your landlord. So you essentially are paying property taxes and school board, and you're funding the school board in the domicile in which you're renting. So it doesn't matter whether you rent or you pay a mortgage, you're still paying for that local school district in which you live. And those kids grow up to be the people that take care of you when you're old and in a nursing home or assisted living or what have you. Do you want a woke kid or a kid who's awake, changing your diaper when you're 80 years old and need assistance? So I tell people, please go to the school boards, sit in the back of the room. You don't have to feel like you've got to even contribute anything, verbally to the conversation, but just make your presence known. And believe you me, that the people that are sitting up at the table at the head of the room, the school board themselves, they will recognize who's a regular face and who's not. And just your mere presence alone will start to hold these people to account. And then eventually, I would encourage that person to bring friends with them and have them bring friends and get a bigger presence. And somebody is going to ask the school board, hey, can you show me your critical race theory? Can you show me what you guys are teaching in terms of sex education? Can you bring the curriculum? Hold them to account, force them to come out of the closet, so to speak, be transparent, shine the light of daylight on them. And you see how quickly they will walk this stuff back, and they will start to fall back in line with what is proper in terms of educating your kids, and where they need to, step out and get away from some of the, demonic material that is changing children's psychological profiles. So this is what we need to do if we really truly value humanity and you value your community. We have to start local.
Right, you're exactly right. Clay Clark did that. He went to his school board. The Iowa Mama Bears, they went to their school board, and they pushed for change, and that change occurred. And that's something that every single one of us who love our country or say that we love our country should do. And I feel like that's not happening as it should. I feel like if we were living in the time that the founding fathers were alive, if they were alive right now, they would be appalled at what they're seeing. They would be absolutely dumbfounded at how our constitutional republic has really changed far for the worse. And I have said this on my Twitter, and it got me in trouble a little bit. I was not banned, but they took my stuff down like a few months ago. I said this, that if the founding fathers were alive today, there would be public hangings. There would be lots and lots and lots of people hung for the world to see, because what is happening in America is treasonous. It is going against the Constitution of America, because they are violating our freedoms. They are violating our liberties. And when that happens, then there needs to be a time where people will step up and say no. And that's not happening like it should.
That's right. Well, the big problem there, in my opinion, Alex, is the fact that we've actually allowed our federal government, which is to uphold the laws of the land, which is the Constitution. We've allowed the federal government to explode into an administrative state. Some people call it the deep state. Some people call it senior executive services. These are the lifers that are appointed that you cannot get rid of. It's like literally impossible to fire these people. But the 14th Amendment, the Federal Register Act of 1935, signed by Franklin Delano Roosevelt. That is what started and created the true deep state, the administrative state, and created all these agencies that you see today, like the CDC, like the NIH, like the Department of Labor, Commerce, the Department of Education. All of these agencies are not listed in our founding fathers' documents in the United States Constitution anywhere. You can't find them. What they stood up and what they got behind for funding was like the Postal Service, the Postal Roads, the military, all the different branches of the military, but not agencies. And so by an executive order, Franklin FDR Roosevelt basically signed on to creating agencies and appointing agency heads, and therefore redelegating his authority, or the authority of the executive branch, to a non-elected appointed agency head. That in itself is a felony violation. You cannot redelegate authority to a non-elected official. So, and that has gone on since 1935. So we're almost 100 years into these massive agencies. And now look how big the federal government is. We have millions and millions of employees across all these agencies around the United States. And therein lies the problem. They're the ones mandating, because they cannot sign a law. They're mandating things like masks and vaccines, and it's completely and utterly unconstitutional at the fundamental level. So until Americans wake up and realize that, Alex, we're going to continue to allow these people to bully us and push us and beat us into submission of what they want, because we are giving them the power, effectively doing that. So one of the things I'm doing to change that is I'm actually on my way after this podcast. I've got to go to the clerk's office, the clerk of the court here in Sarasota County. What I have in this package right here that I'm holding up is my paperwork to finalize my documentation of becoming an American state national, which will take me out of the federal jurisdiction and put me back, correcting my status back as a free people and as a citizen of the state of Florida, not a federal citizen of the United States corporation, which is bankrupt, by the way. So there is the, this is the second half of my journey, and I get my passport and voila. So, but this is the kind of things we do to correct our status inside of our country so that we can defund the swamp literally and refund the kingdom.
Yeah, that's really amazing. One of the things that I feel like a lot of people don't understand is the Constitution at all. I feel like a lot of people haven't even read they haven't even read the preamble, which says, "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America." We need to go back to that. We, the people. We, the people. Joe Biden said like a few months ago that we, the people, is the government. No, the heck it is not, Joe Biden. It is not the government. It is the people who elect the people in the government. And I feel like that has become a fraudulent thing that has recently happened back in November 3rd, 2020.
So here's an interesting concept for you to maybe wrap your mind around this. You seem very intelligent. You'll probably get it right away. When you go back and you read that paragraph that you just read, it says, "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union." Okay. We were known as a constitutional republic as a union of the states. And a union of states, and it was designed where the states had their own executive branch, judicial branch, legislative branch, right? And the Federal District of Columbia was 10 square miles in Washington, D.C., and that had its own executive, judicial, and legislative branch. Okay, and that was to uphold the constitutional laws. States had sovereignty to govern amongst themselves, create their own laws inside the states, which were, separate from the federal District of Columbia. But we were a union, and a nation has a centralized government where everything gets rolled up to one government. Whereas as a union meaning we had a union of 50 states, we have our own decentralized government. We have federalism, which decentralizes the government into a Republican form of government across all 50 states. Hence the reason why all of the election lawsuits that came forward after the insurrection on November 3rd, where they stole the election, all those lawsuits came forward from the states, and some lawsuits had multiple states joining together, bringing lawsuits to the Supreme Court. And the reason they did not have standing is because they weren't federal lawsuits. When you have an election, the states run their own elections. Each state is responsible to run and make sure it runs good and fair and free elections. What happened was that obviously that's not what happened. We had theft and fraud and everything going on under the sun in all 50 states, and 6 of the battleground states. It was really, as you remember from the graphs, made the big F when the vote dumps went in there at 3 o'clock in the morning. But that's why I didn't have standing. So what we have right now is we actually do have a lawsuit that's coming before the Supreme Court. It's in the Supreme Court. It's in Justice Clarence Thomas's desk. It's been on his desk since August 6th or August 9th. And it has standing because it shows that there was federal laws that were violated. The Civil Rights Act of 1964, as well as the Help America Vote Act of 2002. And through HAVA, the HAVA Act of 2002, federal monies were dispersed to all 50 states to run free and fair elections, which did not happen. So now you have standing with this particular case. And now we can bring the evidence of all 50 states into the Supreme Court when they go to sit down and hear the case. It's been in the court for 90 days. It hasn't been booted. So that's a good sign. I think what's going to be very interesting is it is a minority-led case. Obviously, it's the civil rights of minorities. It's Hispanics, Blacks, and American Indians whose rights were violated. In fact, yours and ours and mine were too. We were all disenfranchised But I think this is going to be sort of that crack in Pandora's box, using federal laws to allow for the evidence of 50 states to come in and be heard. So this is what people don't understand, how our government works, and they just make broad-based assumptions, and they then delegate responsibility to others without actually mining the store to make sure that the people they delegate a responsibility are actually doing what they're supposed to be doing. We the people have fallen down, and so we the people must rise up, stand up, and take our country back state by state, and then that's municipality by municipality, county, etc.
Yeah, it takes an individual effort together, each individual working together to help fight for our nation, fight for our country, fight for our freedoms and liberties. Once again, like you mentioned, it said in order to form a more perfect union, that's what we were founded as, and now everyone thinks that America is a democracy or whatever. I hear it all the time. We need to protect our democracy, I'm tired of that, because we were not founded as a democracy. Our founding fathers went out of their way to keep it from being a democracy, because they knew what would happen if it was a democracy, and people have just thrown that out of the window, and they
don't know what it means,
because they don't know what it means, right? And we need to fight. We need to start fighting and to start speaking out, and to give people a voice who don't have a voice. Go to your school board, go to your legislatures, do what needs to be done for us to save our country. I have a question. Do you think that if these election fraud cases go through, that there is ground for Donald Trump to be reinstated?
Oh, definitely. If this goes through and the Supreme Court hears it with all the evidence, yeah, he should be reinstated. What does that look like? Is it a cascade of the of battleground states, pulling back their electors and recasting them for Trump, or did they have to just retract the electors from Biden and then rerun elections? I don't know what the full remedy cycle will be, but I do believe that's what's going to happen. And the reason I believe it's going to be, why I absolutely I'm convinced it'll happen, is what did we see last week happen, Alex? We actually saw the Senate, who had $2.3 or $5 trillion set aside for Build Back Better. They decided, and then Manchin on Sunday said, "Yeah, I'm out." But they had already decided, you know what, we don't want to do Build Back Better. We're gonna focus on voting rights, which is basically federalizing elections. And we go back to March of 2019 when HR 1 was actually presented on the House floor and passed on the House floor. That was to federalize elections, meaning no longer would the states be responsible for running their own elections. It would be the federal government that runs the elections. Well, if we thought fraud was bad, and they were able to steal 6 states really blatantly, what can they do when they control the entire apparatus? That's what they want. They want to federalize these elections so they can control it all. And the reason they are now focusing on that and scrapping the infrastructure bill is because they know that they're caught. And they're like, we've got to stop this at all. We've got to make sure we win in 2022. They know there'll be a landslide. They can't control these off presidential election cycles, like these off-year elections, when you have congressional election years and so forth. They're harder for them to steal. The presidential election years are easy to steal. It's these off election years that are harder to steal. So they know what's coming. They know the red wave's coming. How are they going to do it? They got to federalize the elections.
That's exactly right. I was scrolling through Instagram the other day, and someone posted, and they pointed out how they know that there's a red wave coming, and because there are so many people in Congress who are not running for their seat again, and I thought that to be interesting. How they're not going to run for their seat again. There was like more than 10, and so we definitely need to fight for the right for us to vote without there being any fraud, any interference. There have been there's been Supreme Court cases that have basically said that fraud vitiates everything. And so whenever there's
USA versus Throckmorton 1868, fraud vitiates everything.
That's exactly right. So what that means is that when there is fraud, proven fraud, which there is proven fraud in this election from 2020, that when there is fraud, what was fraudulent needs to be restored. The thing that was previous before the fraud needs to be restored. And we don't have a presidential case on this because there's never been one before, because the United States wasn't as corrupt as it is now. But fraud vitiates everything. That means everything, even a presidential election. So
Right.
when election fraud is proven, then President Trump needs to be restored to his rightful spot as president.
Correct.
And if that doesn't happen, then this means war. That this means, and there's been a war that's been going on for the past 2 years now that the liberals
Mhm.
have been waging on us.
Oh,
And
I
there's
would
ways we
argue,
can.
Alex, that war has been going on since the day President Trump was nominated
Mhm.
and then placed into office when he won in a landslide. I argue that war has been going on since back then. There's been a war against the free people in this country, even for the past 100 years, just with the administrative state that they've given birth to, the federal income tax, the international banking cabal, the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, all of that. This has been a war for over 100 years of them
Mhm.
trying to take back this country. Let's be clear, the United Kingdom, when Cornwallis surrendered and the Revolutionary War was won by we, the people, the Americans, the UK has never gotten over it. Great Britain has been wanting us back ever since, and they've been doing everything they can, including collaborating with our own intelligence communities through our Five Eyes network and our CIA and everybody to spy on people and get information and, illegally wiretap people, all this kind of stuff. This has been a concerted effort for some time because the UK understands under a Trump presidency, the Federal Reserve goes away, the central bankers go away, and we actually get our country back and we control our own money, which is something we haven't done for a long time. So there's a lot at stake here, and the United States has been the world's piggy bank for decades, and they can't afford to lose us because through our tax dollars, we fund so much stuff. And then the printing of money that the United States taxpayer pays the interest on is funding, fraud around the world. It's incredible. I mean, look at USAID, what happened, just the Biden family's rape and pillage alone. It's extraordinary. We could talk about this for days. I don't know how we could ever even encapsulate this in one podcast, just how extraordinary this has all been and to what depth.
You're exactly right. And now that I think about it, I was listening to Lynn Wood the other day, and he was talking about elections, and he went back to the election in 2000 when it was Bush versus Gore, and
Mhm.
they basically made that happen so that they could do electronic voting,
Right.
and that is
Hanging
set
chads.
that is set up what had just happened in 2020. They did that 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And Linwood, I'm not sure if this is true or not, but it could be true. Linwood thinks that every election since 2000 has been rigged, but in 2016 Donald Trump beat the system because they didn't think that he would have any chance at winning, which I'm so
They
glad
didn't
that he
think he would
did.
have any chance of winning, and the algorithm that they applied wasn't big enough to overcome the landslide of people who came out to vote for somebody who was not establishment, because we, the people, have known for some time something was wrong. And I believe Lynn Wood to be correct in his assertion that every election has been a selection since 2000. Thanks to I lived in Palm Beach County during that hanging Chad hell fiasco, and I can tell you right now it was disastrous. But that did, give way to the election machines, and now we know what we know about these machines being connected to the internet, being, votes being flipped using a hammer and scorecard, and then of course all the fraud, the mail-in ballots, the fake paper. The list goes on and on. So,
Mhm.
but I do believe that we, the people, are waking up to all this, and the more we talk about it, the more it reaches people, and this is what's so important. That's why you jumping in here and doing podcasts is going to help your generation understand, so we don't repeat these mistakes, because your generation lives and dies on these phones right here. You guys, your whole world's on them. So is mine for that matter, but you've grown up with it your whole life. So we've got to make sure that we understand that these things are not full, bulletproof, that we've got to, perhaps go back into the dark ages, like using paper for elections. Oh my.
Right. I can't even begin to fathom the algorithm that they applied to the 2020 election to beat Donald Trump, because Joe Biden didn't campaign for squat, like, at all.
They
He
didn't. The algorithm lost, Alex. That was the reason they had to inject all these all these fake ballots in there. They had to compensate with fake, with additional fake
Mhm.
printed ballots, suitcases
Right.
of ballots, and then rerunning those same votes over and over and over again, like we saw in Fulton County. They didn't account for it. That algorithm was not strong enough to overtake the amount of overwhelming votes for Donald Trump. So yeah, they just didn't factor it in.
You know, when I when I
Again.
when I went to bed that night, I looked at Virginia and I looked at Michigan and I looked at Wisconsin. President Trump was winning by 300,000 or 400,000 votes, and then I
Mhm.
wake up and he's losing. That I find that to be very, very impossible. And the only reason it was possible is because of what you just said with the fake ballots and the paper
Yeah.
and everything.
Remember
Why?
Pennsylvania?
Hmm.
He
Yep.
was up by 700,000 votes and then he lost.
Hmm. How many people? I don't remember how many votes were already in. But if he's winning by 700,000, and how many people live in Pennsylvania? Do you know how many
It's a good
voters
question.
live?
I'd have to go it right now before I can
Uh,
give you. I don't know. I don't know what the population of Pennsylvania is, but to be up by 700,000 and then to wake up the next morning with another line going straight up, another F. And then Pennsylvania also had that crazy judge who ruled this Pennsylvania Supreme Court judge who ruled they could accept votes for up to 5 days after the election. What?
Fraud,
Yeah.
fraudulent, fake, unconstitutional, unconstitutional for
Unlawful, illegal, whatever
Pennsylvania,
you want to
right?
say. It's
It
all
it
none of
it,
it's
it
good.
and it's not good, and so we need to continue to fight. What they're doing in Arizona is great. What Wendy Rogers is fighting for is great. I got to the
Do you think Brnovich
opportunity.
is going to do anything, Alex?
I don't know. I don't think so. I got the opportunity to interview Carrie Lake, who is running for Arizona governor, and she's
Great.
all
Yeah,
in with the
she's lovely.
audits. She's amazing. She's all in for the audits. She's all in for fighting for election integrity. Like I mentioned when we were off air, I'm helping run the campaign for governor, not governor yet, Dr. Mark Sherwood, who's running for governor in
Hmm.
Oklahoma. He's all in for the audits. He's all in for election integrity, and we need to vote for people who are for election integrity,
Right.
because if people aren't going to fight for that, then it's going to continue to get worse and worse and worse until the cookie is crumbled completely.
That's right. That's absolutely right. Very, very intelligent young man, Alex.
Thank
I'm honored to know you. I'm glad you reached out, asked me to join you. I feel like I'm really somebody important here because of the people you're interviewing. That's pretty extraordinary.
thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you everybody so much for listening, and thank you, Anne, once again for being on this episode. I hope you all enjoyed. I hope it was meaningful to you, and I hope you learned a lot. God bless you all, and goodbye.
I called General Flynn. I said, General Flynn, I feel like God wants us to team up to do a Reopen America tour and we get people back to God. And he says, I know. I'm going, you know?
We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by you know the thing.
I wasn't thinking of the Bill of Rights when we did this.
I believe America is supposed to be that shining city on the hill, the beacon of freedom.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction.
You gotta make sure you tell me your full face.
These vaccines are zero liability.
There's so much fake information.
It's the David and Goliath thing.
Their agenda is not God's agenda.
Why will the churches not stand up?
I'm trying to save America. I believe we're in the greatest revival in history.
So the people have been wanting me to give a tour of my office where I do my podcast, everything there. And so my brother Zachary, he's holding my phone right now, taking this video. And so come on, Zachary, we're going to show them where my podcast studio is, kind of where I do what I do. First of all, I'm going to ask that you ignore that. This is where my siblings play video games when I'm not doing my thing, which is podcasting and business stuff. So ignore that. We have soundproofing right there. Come over here. We have this. I have no idea why we have this, but it's there, okay? And so we also have books. As you can see, we have a whole library of books. We have the USS Enterprise from the show Star Trek. It's a wonderful show. Zachary, do you like Star Trek?
No.
Why do you not like Star Trek?
Star Wars is better.
That is not an answer. Star Trek and Star Wars are both great, and all of my listeners can quote me on that. We have ASU Sun Devils. My dad was from Arizona, and so this is a nice little thing. Deep state, probably, but I don't care. Let's back up. Thank you. So we have more books over here. All of these are kind of fiction. All of this is nonfiction over here. Some of it is deep state, some of it is not. Someone who is not deep state is Nick Vujicic. I think that's how you say his name. He's called the limbless preacher because he has no limbs. I have no idea how he wrote this book, but he did. And so he endorsed Dr. Mark Sherwood for governor. He loves Jesus. He loves our country. And so I'm happy with that. Right here, my uncle paints. And so here's a painting of his. And if you want deep state, not deep state paintings, then reach out to me and I'll reach out to him, see if he can make you a painting. Because he's good at painting. Show that to them again. Isn't that great? Yes, it is great. So, next on, we have where I do my thing. This is where I do my thing. And so I have a camera, I have lighting, it turns on like that. I have a MAGA hat. You can't go wrong with the Make America Great Again hat with the American flag on the side. Isn't that great? I have my microphone. I love this microphone. It's super easy to use and everything. I have my iPad. I have my laptop under these books. And so these are great books that I use. The Believer's Authority by Kenneth E. Hagin. Great book. It teaches you how to walk and live in the authority that God has given you over the devil. And then the Boom Book by my friend Clay Clark. And if you've listened to Clay Clark, he is one of the greatest men you'll ever listen to. He's so smart, such a genius. And so he put his genius into this book, How to Grow Your Business, How to Grow Your Thing. And so then finally, I have my Bible. This is the Word of God. This is where we get the revelation from God. And so this is a great thing as well. And that's kind of how my podcast started through the Word of God. So let's open to a random chapter. Philippians chapter 2, verse 3. Let nothing be done through selfish ambition or conceit, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem others better than himself. Let each of you look out not only for his own interests, but also for the interests of others. The reason why I do this podcast is because I'm looking out for you. I'm looking out for the listener because I want to show you and teach you how to walk in a godly way, in a godly fashion, without supporting the deep state. And so what we do is we read the Word of God, the King James Version, the New King James Version, New American Standard Bible is where I read the Word of God. Over here, we have my business cards. Point the camera at my business cards. We have a lot of them. See them? See them? There's a lot, okay? So I need to give those out more frequently. I have my handy-dandy pocket knife that I almost never use, but I have it because the Second Amendment exists. And yeah, let's see. We have podcast arms. I don't know why I have so many podcast arms, but I do. And so that's about it. So if you want to, I forgot. Here's this. Defund the swamp and refund the kingdom. If you want to defund the swamp and refund the kingdom, go to mypillow.com and you can use the promo code Stonewall to get up to 66% off your order. That's promo code Stonewall. I have a couple governor coins here. The first interview that I did with the governor of Missouri, he gave me this with the black back. And then the second one that he gave me was the bicentennial with the white back. And so that was a cool thing. And that's about it for my office. That's about it for where I do what I do. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching this episode. God bless you all. Have a great day. Bye-bye.